Let's talk about what personalization is not. It's not about putting all kids on a device, having them use an adaptive learning tool where there's no talking, no discourse. Education has been so long, all students doing the same thing at the same time, the same way. We know that doesn't meet their needs. Our definition of personalization is all students getting what they need when and where they need it to learn.
Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the Easy EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the Easy EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by my new mini course, Learn ChatGPT This Summer, which is now available to all members of my AI and Education membership. Join today and stay for 1 month, the whole school year, or however long you like. You'll get instant access to my mini course, Learn ChatGPT This Summer, with 6 short videos. It's built into my AI and Education membership, so you'll get all the member perks too, like a new video update each month and plenty more to explore. Go to my website, classtechtips.com/AI, to find the link to the membership. That's classtechtips.com/AI for all of the details. This week's episode is titled Unlocking Personalized Learning in K-12 with Eric Sheninger and Nicki Slaugh. Personalized learning can feel like an intimidating topic, but Eric and Nicki have a new book that unpacks personalized learning and what it can look like in a classroom setting, both with and without technology. I got a sneak peek at their new book that came out in June, and I asked them to join for an episode today so you could get some actionable strategies to take into the upcoming school year and a behind-the-scenes look at their book too. Let's jump into the conversation. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to chat with you both today about personalized learning and your new book that just came out. But before we jump into all of that, would love to hear from you both. What is your role in education? What does your day-to-day look like?
Well, it's my role. Everyone asks me, and it's so hard to explain. Right now, I'm the CEO of Aspire Change EDU, former New Jersey principal, and my day-to-day looks different. I wake up and I'm like, what the heck is on my calendar? So I get to support school systems all over the world on how to fundamentally improve teaching, learning, and leadership.
I am currently a junior high principal, and so my day-to-day is pretty crazy also, but the best part of my job is going in and out of classrooms and doing walkthroughs and drop-ins throughout the day. We play music in the halls, so we're always dancing, but basically just enjoying life, working with kiddos, and working with my teachers each day.
Well, excited to hear both of your perspectives from your day-to-day work around this topic of personalized learning. It's a term that we hear in lots of different contexts and conversations. So to get us started today, how do you define personalized learning and what are its key components?
Well, I'm going to start with kind of like the definition, because then I'm going to let Nicki, the practitioner, really jump into those key components. Let's talk about what personalization is not. It's not about putting all kids on a device, having them use an adaptive learning tool where there's no talking, no discourse. Education has been so long, all students doing the same thing at the same time, the same way. We know that doesn't meet their needs. Our definition of personalization is all students getting what they need when and where they need it to learn. Nicki, what are those key components that you get to see fulfilled through the lens of your teachers that you feel are those elements that really bring out personalization?
I believe that we need to talk about path, place, pace, voice, and choice. So, for example, in a math classroom, students could be moving at their own pace based off where they're at according to their data. So, for example, we're going to remove the boundaries of seat time and allow students to move at their own pace as they prove proficiency, right? So I have children that are accomplishing 2 years of math in 1 year. Another example would be children choosing how they want to learn. Rather, they want to learn from a teacher in a small group setting, learn from listening to a podcast, watching a video, or my avid readers love to read articles and annotate. So just allowing the students to have ownership in their learning and be engaged each day.
And in practice, right, this idea of having students work in a way that is just right for them. We know technology can play a role, it doesn't have to be there, but what role can it play, right, in facilitating personalized learning in a classroom setting?
Yeah, that's a great question because it comes back to kind of one of the main points we emphasize in the book that you don't need technology to personalize. However, it does make it much more manageable. And when we think about the high agency strategies that Nicki talked about, voice, choice, path, pace, place. With voice, we can use technology where every student can respond to a check for understanding, a review of prior learning, or closure in the form of exit ticket. With choice, students can choose to go and get more help on a tool like extra math, or they can choose to be challenged through a breakout EDU activity. When we think about pace, working at their own pace while getting that immediate feedback. And I think that's the one piece with technology. And then I'll kind of let Nicki chime in is, the technology allows teachers to get real-time data so that they can maximize their time in the classroom. That's another key tenet of personalization. How do we maximize the time that we have with kids to support them?
Our goal is to remove the teacher from in front of the classroom, right? We don't want to do the one size fits all approach where we're lecturing kiddos all day because we do not want our students to just be compliant, right? We want them to be engaged in their learning. So in order to remove the teacher from the front of the classroom, we need to provide our teachers with tools, tech tools, so they can create a flipped classroom approach, right? So the students have access 24/7 to the mini lessons that our teachers can provide. They can watch it, they can pause, they can rewatch it, while the teacher is using the instant data that they received from using a different tech tool to pull small group or meet one-on-one with each student. So I feel like technology is such an important part, and it allows them to have instant data to know where all their students are at, helps them meet their needs. It provides them opportunities to give their students feedback, live feedback, and they can go back and forth so that once they receive the feedback, they can read it and communicate to the teacher online, right? And go back and forth so that they're constantly learning and growing. So multiple ways.
Yeah. And just in that real time feedback, having information you can act on right away. I think so much of it in my conversations with educators too is around scaling their impact, right? Like they know all these things are important. They want to make it happen, but they just can't do all the things right at once or can't gather all that information, right? In a way that is super organized and actionable without the help, right, of some of these different pieces. So, I imagine in your conversations too, you hear about some of the challenges, right, that educators face when implementing personalized learning. How do they address them? How do they overcome those challenges?
So I'm going to let Nicki take that first because she gets to see it firsthand every day, working in a school side by side with her teachers. So Nicki, kind of add that bird's eye view, and then I'll add a more holistic impression from what I'm hearing and seeing from my schools and districts.
I think the most common misconception when you start talking to teachers from moving from a traditional setting to a personalized setting is they fear it's more work when really it's not more work. So I think once we remove that fear of I don't there's no time to do this, when we provide them with the tools and the resources that we just talked about to help them receive data instantly versus taking piles of papers home to score every night, right? So when we get rid of those daily to-do lists, checklists that we've done forever, and we actually give them voice to where they can create and design different opportunities for their students, where they can get instant data and actually meet their needs one-on-one and form relationships and connections with them, then the fear goes away and the challenges go away. So I don't really feel like there's any challenges. I think the challenge is getting them to switch their mindset and realize it's not more work. Once they dive in and do it and they see that it works, it kind of, all of my teachers feel like their why, their personal philosophy that they had when they went into education is blossomed again, right? They love their job again. So it's just removing that fear of, can I do it? And is it a lot of work?
Yeah. And I think it's a big shift from, how do we not do more work? How do we do better work?
Yeah.
And it comes back to the one thing that teachers can control. They can control how they use the time they have with students. And when we think about how taxing education can be, if the teacher's doing all the work, they're going to go home at the end of the day and be exhausted. And when we think about maximizing that time, and that's where artificial intelligence can really be a supercharger in terms of personalization. Now, with advances in AI, it can analyze data in real time and provide the teacher with the specific intervention for what Nicki talked about before. She talked about small group. What is she referencing? Tier 2 in response to intervention. She talked about one-on-one support. That's tier 3. So we really emphasize that personalization is not new. We get focused on the word. So we need to get past this is new, this is more work. It's doing better work. It's being appreciative of the time that we have with our kids, building those relationships. Also, again, moving away from that sole focus on tech. The key, word in personalization is personal. How we build those relationships, the positive reinforcement, all those elements that are critical. So, and again, I think also one thing that I know Nicki would echo, that teachers, they need to be adequately trained. And we need to move away from professional development, something that's done to teachers, to professional learning, something that is ongoing, job embedded, something where they see the value, they can see the examples. The one thing, Monica, that teachers always tell me and administrators, they're like, Eric, we know the why in terms of personalization. We want to know, how can we do it effectively and what can it look like? And those are elements that Nicki and I have really fleshed out, not only in the book, but in the multiple appendices, to try to listen to what the educators truly need to be successful with personalization.
And just the ability to have examples, ideas to come back to, like you said, the in-action piece of this all is so crucial. And, Nicki, I want to ask you about student engagement. You mentioned engagement earlier, but before I do, Eric, you mentioned AI, right? And the AI of it all, right? And this connection to personalizing learning experiences. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing, what you're waiting for, what you're hoping kind of in that space?
Well, I see AI as the what, in terms of, because we don't want to go to AI first. So when we think about, well, why do we do things the way we do them? How might we do it better? And then looking at AI as that, what can we use to support and enhance what we're already doing? So the key tenets of personalization is to look at where those opportunities of growth are for our teachers. Maybe it is improving direct instruction through student voice. Maybe it's integrating choice that challenges students, but provides that relevant application. Maybe it's that assessment piece that a teacher needs help developing a rubric. Maybe it's an idea on how to scaffold questions and tasks. That's where AI comes in. And when the teachers can identify what they're teaching and how they're going to teach it, the standard, when they focus on the strategies, then they can really go into AI, and it's such a time saver. So in my role, I show teachers at the end of workshops, the end of presentations, here's how AI can make personalization not just manageable, but something that you want to do.
And it's such a good reminder and I'm sure you both have heard this too in conversations around AI. Like, is this going to replace me? Right? Is this going to, do all the things I can do? But you really can't make the most of that technology without the knowledge base, right? Without the experience, without that level of expertise. So I really appreciate you mentioning those connections, Eric, just, as we think about what AI might look like in a conversation on personalized learning. So, Nicki, back to that student engagement piece, how does personalized learning impact student engagement and motivation?
Well, part of personalization is rubrics that Eric mentioned.
Mhm.
And traditionally, students, just receive their points after they submit an assignment or a test, right? That doesn't actually explain what they learned or where they need to improve on, right? And so I feel like students are more engaged when you have proficiency skills or rubrics that actually are very clear and transparent so the students know exactly what they're learning, right? They can identify what are they learning, why are they learning it, and they can also identify where they're at in the learning process. So that's kind of the beginning, just moving away from just a point system to adding in some rubrics and proficiency skills, right? For teacher clarity. Also, I feel like students are more engaged because when you remove the teacher from the front of the room during direct instruction the entire time, and you provide more of the flipped classroom approach or station rotation or centers, however you set it up. When you actually work one-on-one in small group, you get to know that child. You also identify what type of learner they are. So that way, when you develop your choice activities, it's actually based off each child's needs, right? You understand how each child learns better. And when the students can see that you care and you're creating pathways for them, then they start to be more engaged, right? So you're not just a student sitting in a desk being talked to. You're actually recognized as an individual. And then the more conversations you have in your small group and one-on-one, you also develop a relationship where you can ask questions. So you're more engaged because you don't feel like you just have to sit there, because especially younger kids and teens, nobody wants to raise their hand and ask questions, right? So there's a variety of ways that they're engaged, but having voice, choice, having different pathways, moving at their own pace, not having to wait for the rest of the class. If they can prove proficiency, move ahead, right? Having their own individual pathways, and then creating an environment where everyone celebrates learning. So no matter what pathway you're on, no matter what you're doing, what choice you chose, the end goal is mastery and learning, and they all celebrate each other.
And gosh, as you're talking, I can't help but think about just the classroom management, right? Implications for this too, right? Everyone's on point. They know that this is for them, that their voice is valued, right? And that can, I'm sure, in many, environments impact what it looks like to run a classroom, right? Where everyone is doing what they, individually need to do. So I'm going to make sure to link out for listeners to your book and resources and all those things. But I want them to hear from you both. Tell us about your book. What are the most important takeaways you hope readers will gain from this brand new resource?
The most important thing, and I think Nicki would agree with this, is there is not one right or best way to personalize. She mentioned various pedagogical approaches, rotational models, choice boards, must do, may do, playlists, flipped lessons, differentiated tasks. We want people to understand the most effective way is your way. Don't feel pressured that you have to do it all. Don't think that you have to have a 9-option choice board. You could have a 3-option choice board. Sometimes it's just letting kids choose how to demonstrate understanding. So, and I think the other piece is, when I was listening to Nicki talk, the real premise of the book is, I think about Dan Pink and Drive. It's personalization is about moving away from if-then rewards, carrots and sticks, where students are able to self-regulate.
And I think, for anyone listening that probably resonates with themselves, right, as a learner, things that they're motivated to do, the things that they're motivated to accomplish. And, as we think about this connection to classrooms today, I'm just very excited for people to get their hands. I got a sneak peek, but I'm very excited for people to get their hands on your new book. So although the links will be out there for everyone to click on, if someone is on the go and just making that mental bookmark, where can they connect with you both? Where can they learn more about your work?
Well, I'm easy to find, ericsheninger.com, or basically every social media account. Even though I'm on TikTok, I don't know. I'm not a TikToker. I need my daughter to help me, but anywhere, any digital space, I'm there.
Same Instagram, Twitter, and I am on TikTok also, but they can go to nickislaugh.com to find it all also. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'll make sure to link out for everyone. Eric, Nicki, thank you so much for your time today. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Personalized learning can boost student engagement. Setting up personalized experiences may be easier than you think. Education technology can help scale your impact. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from this episode, including all of the ways to connect with Eric Sheninger and Nicki Slaugh, by heading to classtechtips.com/podcast and finding today's episode number 275. This episode is sponsored by my new mini course, Learn ChatGPT This Summer, which is now available to all members of my AI and Education membership. Join today and stay for 1 month, the whole school year, or however long you like. You'll get instant access to my mini course, Learn ChatGPT This Summer, with 6 short videos. It's built into my AI and Education membership, so you'll get all the member perks too, like a new video update each month and plenty more to explore. Go to my website, classtechtips.com/AI, to find the link to the membership. That's classtechtips.com/AI for all of the details. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.